Welcome to Occupations, the podcast, where we discuss what it's like to hold specific jobs. Occupations is brought to you by lotsofmaps.com, where you fulfill your vintage map gifting needs. Visit lotsofmaps.com.
Hi, this is Andy Jagalenza. Welcome to Occupations, the podcast. Today we're visited by Ken Krilla.
Hey.
Ken, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thanks.
Ken's specialty, now this is the first one we've done where it's not a full-time job. Ken is an expert, I would call him, at volunteerism and charitable work and giving of himself. Everyone seems to do a little bit of charity work here and there, or does a little bit of fundraising, maybe does a walk or something like that. But Ken is unlike anybody I know. He's constantly doing something for other people, sometimes to raise funds, sometimes to just help out. He just never stops, and I would almost call him an expert at it. And so I figured, let's get him on here and see what makes him tick. Ken, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So, Ken, I wonder what kind of got you into volunteerism in the first place.
Andy, I'd say, yes, thank you for all the beautiful things you've said about me. I don't feel like I'm doing anything different. This is just who I am. So it's not a huge effort for me. It started, I think, most people who know me know that I was diagnosed as diabetic as 7, when I was 7 years old. Soon after that, I was a kid. We had skate-a-thons. We did things to raise money for juvenile diabetes, and they were all fun. And my parents brought me to those, and we'd go around kind of the guilt factor, knock on neighbors' doors. That happened, and they were fun, and then, got into a little bit older and got to high school, and that's really where it picked up. I had a friend in high school, and it was our senior year at my school in New Jersey, Del Barton, that a friend said, hey, we're going to do Habitat for Humanity. Who wants to help? Well, I had no idea what that was, but, 8 of us showed up, and, we had the luxury of, knocking down a house. So it wasn't like building. It wasn't like the hard, talented stuff. It was like, hey, here's a sledgehammer, here's a crowbar. Like, we just ripped that. We filled up a dumpster within 2 hours because we were just high school guys who were raging, this is awesome. So that got me really excited, and we felt good. And I kind of left that being on a helper's high. That was what I feel is the impetus to helping others and doing things that make me feel good. I don't know if it's selfish or not. I feel like when I help others, it makes me feel really good. So if that's the case, that's the case.
So every time you volunteer, you tear something down? Is that?
I've been doing that, yeah, year in, year in.
Okay. I've known you for many years, and you're always up to something to help others. Now, it may just be me calling you and saying, hey, Ken, you need to rip the ceiling down in my kitchen. Come over and do it.
We need to do a podcast by tomorrow.
Something like that. Yeah. But most of the stuff that you do is charitable. I know you're a member of the Lions of Belmont, and I know you guys are constantly doing things to raise funds, including, tell me about the Christmas tree sales. That's your biggest fundraiser, I know, and it's I know you do a ton of physical labor. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the Lions Club in Belmont has been around for 75 years. And I stumbled upon it. I went to buy a Christmas tree there prior to being a member. And one of the fellows there had invited me in. It's an old train station, if you ever get a chance to check it out, in Belmont. And I was curious what the building was. So he brought me in. I was like, wow, this place is great. And there were just a bunch of other guys who were trying to do good things. And I quickly said, wow, this is great. I just moved to the town, so I didn't know anything in Belmont. I thought this is a great place to find out the best mechanic, the best dry cleaner, the best pizza place. And these guys were mostly townies. Enjoyed that. Found out that we sell Christmas trees in the winter, and we do it right after Thanksgiving, and we sell over 2,000 trees. So we're all volunteers. It's pretty cool to see a lot of the customers, year in, year out, as well as people coming back because this was their tradition. The trees have been sold for, I think, close to 60 years. So, and it is, as you said, it's a fundraiser. So it's a fundraiser, but it's also, it's a social event for us. We get to see 2,000 plus families buying their tree. I don't know how it happens, but everyone gets their perfect tree, and that's pretty cool. So we've had some great encounters with some famous local people. Andy and his wife have come and bought trees from us several years. So that's cool. But it is cool because people like you and people come from farther away just to get a tree from us when you could do it really locally to your own place. But I think people enjoy what we do. We're all pretty energetic for, being out there 6 6 hours on a weekend or something like that. So, but yeah, so that's one of the instances of me helping other people, I think.
How does the Lions spend their money? What do they do with their funds?
Yeah, so the Lions in general they were chartered with helping out to cure blindness from Helen Keller, had kind of knocked on the door, if you will, back at the World Fair in Chicago and said, hey, why don't you guys become the Knights of the Blind? So they've been raising funds for eye care now, so sight as well as hearing, and they've done some marvelous things, even here locally in Massachusetts with the Mass Eye and Ear Hospital. Some of the research they've done and been able to do because of our funding has been remarkable. And it's not just Belmont, it's all of Massachusetts. And the Lions Club around the world, largest service organization around the world.
So I know you were doing annually Polar Plunge, and I know you were changing charities every year. So 1st of January, you were out on in Southie at L Street, plunging in the water, frigid temperatures, sometimes warm, sometimes completely frozen over. And I know you've been doing that for many years. How did you get involved in that part of the charitable stuff?
Interestingly, you and I have some similar friends, and so the common friendship was through some fellows that were trying to help out an additional friend, a third-party friend. And we had done that to try to help out Camp Sunshine, a wonderful camp up in Maine. Check that out if you can. And someone asked me if I wanted to do it, and without any hesitation, the answer was yes. Like, okay, sure. And the first couple of years, I raised a couple $100s because I just asked some friends. And it was mostly the camaraderie of doing it with other people. Sure, it sounded crazy, but like, okay, sure. I mean, whatever. It didn't stop me from doing my standard thing on New Year's Eve, which, for good or for bad, you've been part of those. So we don't need to go into those details. But, I'd be up quite late, quite early in the morning on January 1st and then stroll over to the L Street bathhouse. And a bunch of really crazy people are doing it. I think it made me feel a little bit better because we were doing it for a charity rather than just plunging. Those guys are nuts. And it became just something I was doing. And after about 9 years or so, the other fellows that I'd done it with kind of like, hey, we've done it 9 years. That's cool. And I was like, well, I'm still willing to be crazy. Let me go in. And so it became a thing, I suppose. And this year would have been the 20th year. I was not able to do it because I was traveling. But so I've been doing it every year, and I changed the charities around every year. After that 9th year, I've been changing it so that to help out other local charities and just raising funds, but also raising awareness. And I think that's a very, very important thing when helping out a nonprofit or helping out others is to raise the awareness rather than just the funds.
And what does raising the awareness really do for them?
Well, it allows the nonprofit to be better identified to the audience, but also it allows my friends, their friends, to become aware of something that there could be an opportunity out there that they could be a benefit of or beneficiary of. With the Lions Club, we do a lot of local charities as well, help out. So it's things like that the money is great, but raising the awareness of what a service that's there, I think is, I don't say more important, but it's of equal importance as the funds.
So I don't know if you remember all the charities you've done, but you must remember some of them. Can you name a few that you've worked with?
Yeah, sure. There's a great one called Birthday Wishes, which is fairly local here to you guys. They have a birthday party for children that sadly are homeless or are in different situations that might not have a home to have a birthday party. That was kind of cool. Most of the charities I work with are for children focused. One that was not children focused was a charity called A Leg Forever. A family up in Stoneham, two brothers had both sadly lost a leg during the Boston Marathon bombing way back when, and both of these gentlemen have done so remarkably well in their recoveries. But the mother had identified that the Boston One Fund had helped out, and had she not had the Boston One Fund, it would have been remarkably difficult. So she has a charity that's helping people that lose like a leg unexpectedly because it's not something that you really kind of plan for. I've done Urban Adventures, which is a kind of a camp in downtown Boston for kids that are, urban living and they're able to explore other parts of Boston.
On top of that, you sometimes go and volunteer at some of these charities, nothing to do with the Polar Plunge. I know with Camp Sunshine, you've spent some time up there. Obviously, you volunteered your time, but what do they have you do, and how could you help out even in the smallest way?
Yeah, that to me is a very interesting component because putting the effort in, raising funds is great. You can raise money, but I went to Camp Sunshine, and it's not a close ride. I actually didn't know anybody else who was going up there. I at the time I was not comfortable as a camp counselor. It was for a bereavement week, which meant that the families were there with all the families that were going to the camp that week had lost a child. And as a new person to the camp, I didn't think I had the wherewithal to, be helping out in that capacity. But from an equal importance, I worked on the maintenance. I was working with we built a hockey arena for kids in the winter, and it was quite awesome. I stayed on campus. They let me live on the campus for the 3 days I was up there volunteering, and it was remarkable.
And tell people what Camp Sunshine is and what they do.
Yeah, so Camp Sunshine is a free camp. Good question, because a lot of people might know the name. Camp Sunshine is a free camp for children and families of life-threatening illnesses. So each week kind of specializes in a particular illness. And so it's great because, and as I said, it's free. The child that does have this illness can see other children that are equally challenged with a similar situation, let's just say. And then it's also cool because the families get to hang out with each other. And, you could talk to another sibling and say, geez, what's it like to have your sister or brother in this situation? And it's an endearing opportunity, and it's up in Maine, and people come from all over the country. I'm not even sure, it could be all over the world, but it's a great opportunity and a great environment. So that was a thrill for me to be at least part of this charity or part of this nonprofit by going up and helping out for the few days I was up there. But then, as mentioned earlier, raising funds for them for 9 years was pretty cool.
And all that volunteerism and all the funds that come in charitably go towards that. So wonderful program.
Yeah. I feel really, really good. And I use the term helper's high because I think that it's just something that it's hard to describe. And when I do it, I feel great. And that was part of the impetus for a project I had run when I was in graduate school. At Babson College, we had an opportunity to run a program, and I talked to my friends who run the business, the brewery, Harpoon Brewery. And we kind of thought, hey, there's a bunch of people that were drinking craft beer, and this is, the early 2000s. There weren't nearly as many craft beers out. And we said, hey, there's a lot of people that like drinking beer but like helping others. And we kind of nailed it. We helped design a Harpoon Helps group of people that were dedicated drinkers but also dedicated to helping out the community. And honestly, that's one of the things I'm most proud of, is that Harpoon is still to this day using it. A very strange situation when Harpoon started, their slogan was to brew and to serve. And I always loved that. I thought that was a cool slogan. And then they stopped that, and it was love beer, love life. And I was always a little upset. And it turns out after the implementation of this Harpoon Helps charitable side of their company, they had then reintroduced the to brew and to serve. And I thought, oh, wow, like the double entendre was just really, really cool, that I didn't know that's why I liked the slogan originally. And the stuff that Harpoon Helps has done to bring Christmas decorations and cheer to a lot of local nonprofits and decorate their locations and help out with gift giving and gift cards. At one point, it was all the way out to Texas. There were volunteers helping out. So that, to me, was really cool. And to see people, like, it would sell out. Like, volunteers would want to get in to be the first 500 people that could help. And it was a great, great opportunity, and quite proud to see that it's still going on.
So when you left New Jersey, now you came up to New England to go to school, correct?
Yes, Providence College.
Friar.
Yep.
And then you settled in the Boston area,
Yep.
Job related, I assume?
Job search related.
Okay.
Girlfriend related too.
There's always that. And so what did you do when you first got here charity-wise? How did you get started up here?
Yeah, so let me backtrack a little bit to Providence College. One of my best friends at school, Maddie, he and I had a lot of similar interests where we liked helping other people. It just, again, helped us out, but we also liked getting out and about. So not a lot of guys are waking up early Saturday mornings to go help out others. And he and I would put on our shit kicker boots and our flannel shirts and would go help out at Habitat for Humanity. And it was really cool. Like, we didn't know what we were doing. Like, we barely, we didn't know if it was a left-handed or right-handed screwdriver at the time. But we would go help and would learn stuff. And Matt and I would be put in charge of putting the lathe on this ceiling. And, like, turns out when we were done, we did it wrong. But, like, we learned what not to do now. But it just, would work a full day and would get back to campus at, like, 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock on a Saturday. And most people are kind of waking up or doing their thing. And it just really made us feel really good. So that was kind of the impetus. As I mentioned, in high school, I did Habitat for Humanity. That was what started it. Then in college, Matt and I just did this. It wasn't every Saturday for sure, but it was, probably once every other month. Really quite enjoyed that. Then moving up here to Boston, I didn't know a lot of people. And that was a thing I did. I would help out with Habitat for Humanity. And it was really cool. Again, maybe curiously, I just wanted to learn. I don't know a lot about house building or repairs, but I didn't need to. I was a renter at the time. But it was quite cool seeing some of the experts. And the weekends were great because they were busy, but I would take a Wednesday off of work because that's when the tradesmen would go and volunteer a day. So yeah, it was just great because I'd be working with a trade plumber or a union carpenter, and learning from them was quite cool. But then also often you'd be working with a resident, and Habitat for Humanity at the time, the resident who would be moving in had to put in sweat equity and put in a certain amount of 500 volunteer hours. And it's a very different story when you're there with volunteers on a Saturday morning and it's a group of people from a church or from a town, as opposed to working with someone who is underprivileged and having a challenging time. And, we're literally building their house. So some great times in some, gritty areas of Boston that I never would have been to had it not been for these occasions. And yeah, some of the stories I have from co-working with them, if you will, to build their house was great. And we were putting together a kitchen, and I remember the woman said, "Oh, when Thanksgiving's red, Kenny, you got to come and have Thanksgiving over here." And I was like, "Oh, that's wonderful." And she and another friend of hers and I went out to lunch, and boy, there were not a lot of Ken-looking people at this restaurant, and they were just so phenomenally fun and come on, we got to get you some good stuff here, country fried chicken, and it was just they were wonderful, and I had such a great memory, and that was 20 plus years ago, and they were just so endearing. They were grateful for me helping, but we just felt like buddies, and that was a really cool memory, I feel like, and I wish them the best with whatever they're doing now.
Lotsofmaps.com. Vintage, local, national, and world maps for an affordable price. 99% of our maps are $25 or less. Great as gifts. Frame them or put them under glass for your home, vacation home, or as a memory of a special place. Lotsofmaps.com.
So I know a lot of these charity programs, you're raising funds. Not all of them, but certainly some of them. You're raising funds to try to help out a charity. I assume most of them you're getting your friends to donate a certain amount of money to help you with your goals. How do you do that? It's hard to ask other people to contribute, over and over again, especially. I mean, you do it constantly, and although it's good works, I'm sure it comes to a point where people are just like, man, you just asked me for money, 2 months ago for something else. So how are you able to do this over and over again and still be able to come up with a fair amount of funds without pissing off your friends?
That's a good question. I think just to kind of establish, I don't do many fundraising events other than the Polar Plunge. So
Okay.
That does help me out in that capacity where it's right after Christmas, and it doesn't take a long time to make someone aware of what I'm doing. So I don't have to, knock on their door and, in August and say, hey, I'm doing this January 1st. Because I've done it so many years, people, I don't say they expect it, but they're not shocked when they get my email.
Right.
And there are lots of friends that are like, okay, whatever, Kenny, I'm here. Here's the $100. So I don't say they don't care, but the charity is not a concern for them. They know I'm doing something that's for good. They don't have to read into, they know I've vetted it. So that is kind of funny that people are just on my emails that I send to them, I try to give a description. I've been doing this for, almost 20 years. And if they don't want to read this, just click on the link, and people will just, okay, click on the link. Or, people will even ask, hey, are you doing the plunge? In fact, I had 3 people ask me this year, are you doing the plunge? I want to send a check. I said, I kind of bailed on it this year. I was doing something else. So I'm hoping these people save the money, invested it for next year. But I think telling people what I'm doing makes it more real than just asking for the money. It's, as I said, and we talked about it earlier, it's not the money necessarily, it's making the awareness. So if someone can give, $6, that's great. That's $6 more than this charity may have had prior to me asking. But now that, oh my gosh, there's a charity that does this and helps out, homeless kids, or it's a home for, children that have lost, a parent, or a camp where, kids have lost a sibling or lost a parent. So there's a lot of things out there that we just don't know because we don't need to know. And, we've been very, very fortunate to have very privileged lives that we haven't had perhaps, some tragedies. And there are many other people that have had these tragedies and therefore can benefit from this. So if I can make you aware, if I can make other people aware, and something happens within their network, they can then alert that person in their network, hey, I do know about this camp or this, school or this whatever.
So basically the message is anyone could do this, raise some funds without worrying about how much they really raise. It's really about awareness, and if you can make a few bucks, great. For the charity, that's great. Obviously, we want to get our listeners to go volunteer and to maybe raise some funds for some charities. So we want to make it look as easy as possible, and it sounds like that's the case.
Yeah, I would say the hardest part for me when I do my polar plunge is finding which charity I want to do it for. I mean, there's plenty of charities. You could Google anything nowadays and say local Boston children's fundraising, and whatever you find, there's a million different things. And it's great just bringing the fact that there are so many things that I don't know about, and I'm doing this quite a bit, makes me think that many of my friends in my network are unaware of that as well. So, yeah, raising awareness, raising some funds is great. I thought of another one of the charities that I work for. Team Impact was unbelievable. The college teams that adopt a child, if you will, and the child is now a teammate of theirs for the whole season, and it's nationwide. It's unbelievable. They bring the child into practices, and the child is part of the team. They've got a shirt, a jacket, whatever they are on the team, and it's just amazing to see the benefit of these these buddies. Whatever it was 20 years ago, started this Team Impact, and they just all kind of had the same idea, and it was really, really cool. So that was another one of the charities that I worked with that, had I not known about it or not searched for it, I wouldn't have known about it. And now I see it everywhere. It's really, really cool and very powerful.
Now, you weren't able to do this year's polar plunge, you said, because you were traveling, but I know that you weren't just traveling. I know it was work-related, but you were also giving of your time to a situation where people really needed help. Even though you were being paid for it, that was part of your gig. I know what you were doing was good work for people. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, sure. And as you said, yeah, I kind of skipped out on the polar plunge, but I hope for good and not for evil. I was given an opportunity early to mid-October. A Native Hawaiian organization started by my brother and my cousin, Krilla K2, NHO.com, had invited me to partake in helping assess the properties of the Maui wildfires. So if you recall, back in August of 2023, there were wildfires in Maui that destroyed an enormous amount of properties. It was something in the line of over 1,600 plots and over 2,200 structures were destroyed. And
lives were lost, too.
Over 100 people had perished in the wildfire, and still a few people are missing, and over 7,000 people were homeless, and over 6,000 still are. So I didn't even know that this existed. I remember the wildfires, but we're on the East Coast for 5,000 miles away, and it hit the news for 2 weeks, and I felt very badly that I didn't recall until my brother brought it up to me and said, "Hey, we'd love for you to help us out with this." And I jumped at the opportunity. It was a massive change in my lifestyle. I had 4 days or 5 days to get my stuff together and fly over there, and it was emotionally draining. It was a lot of difficult work, not heavy lifting, but just seeing all that devastation was just mind-numbing. I've seen houses. I've seen a house fire. I've seen the destruction of a house fire, but this was everything was just wildly devastated. So helping out there was really cool. It wasn't just doing my job and then going back to my room. We had the fortune of staying in a hotel, but we met many residents of the Lahaina that were living in the hotel, and we met cultural monitors, people that are locals, and it was great. I felt like part of the community, and that, again, as I said, that's really what makes it valuable for me, is being part of the solution and helping others. So, yes, to your point, it was a paid gig, no question about that. But it was, I think there were other gigs I could have done that were, very different, and this one just had a life-changing impact for me, for sure. And I've got the benefit of actually heading back there mid-February. I'll be working on phase 2, which is the debris removal part of the same project.
So what were you doing in the first trip?
Yeah, so my job was my team. We were QCs, so we were quality control on the assessment of all these properties. So as I said, over 1,600 plots were devastated. So we checked the assessment. There were experts in each of these different fields. Was asbestos to see, the the amount of asbestos in the properties, and if there was, we had to abate it, as well as household hazardous materials, batteries, propane tanks, munitions, and then the other one was trees. There were hazardous trees that were certainly not safe anymore. So those were the three major things we were identifying in each property, building a digital map, and then on that digital map, the next phase, which is the debris removal, will know how to, remove the ash and the other, debris that's within there. So the one part, the asbestos, would be removed prior to that, so it's safer for the debris removal. So it was just a very interesting project, and almost everyone I worked with was just so passionate about, helping others and getting Lahaina back to where they were and rise up again. So very challenging work from an emotional standpoint, but very, very rewarding, unlike, I would say, anything else I've worked on.
Yeah, and even though you were being paid, it just shows that you try to do things that are going to help people that need it, which I give you tons of credit for.
Thanks.
Yeah, really amazing stuff. Can you give me some more examples of how you've kind of given your time to others? Do you have anything else you might want to talk about?
Yeah, sure. Interestingly, there are opportunities all over the place, and it's just a matter of kind of finding them. As a graduate from Babson, from their MBA school, they had an opportunity after, as alumni, to come back and coach some of the undergrads, and coaching from a professional standpoint. So people that had been working in industries would come back and help coach these kids on their communication skills, their listening skills, their ethics skills, decision making. It was quite amazing. So, and there's brilliant students at Babson. There was a freshman class that we would work with, like their freshman year and then also their junior year. So I would go back, I think they had them on Thursday nights. I would do it like 2 Thursday nights for freshmen and then Tuesday, Thursday nights for juniors later in the year. And it was remarkable. The kids were very, very appreciative to have like an adult that wasn't a teacher, wasn't their parent, talk to them about things. So that was just, the opportunity was there. And I did it for probably 15 plus years. Sadly, the program had ended, but I found it, again, you're helping out other people. And it was just really, it was a very cool feeling. A great opportunity that was just kind of, I don't want to say thrown into my lap, but it was available. I just never really, you could take advantage of things that are available to you, or you cannot. And I think, sadly, more people don't reach out and do those things. But it was a remarkable program to be involved with, for sure.
So I know that you were alumni at the time. How did you find out about this program? Did they come knocking to alumni and sort of knocking on your door and saying, "Hey, we need some volunteers to help out kids," or was this something you actually looked to do, something for the school or something for the students?
Well, I'll tell you. I wish it was a better story. As an alumni of any school, there's often a knock on the door for, "Hey, could you help us out with some funds or donation?" And I always said, as soon as my tuition's paid off, I'll donate. But this turned out to be a better opportunity because there was no money exchanged. I'd rather give the time and let other people, give the money, and that's always been my purpose. So I'd give a Thursday night, and it was after work. I'd have to leave work maybe at 4:30. So I'd take a little bit of time off of work, but then I'd come back and, be there till 11:30 at night. And I just felt inspired at the end of the night. So that was, I guess the school was asking me, but it was also because I was not interested in donating the money. That's, if you think about all the things I've just talked about, I haven't been the one giving the money away. I've been the one who's kind of working it. So with my polar plunge, I always say, let me be crazy, let you guys be generous.
Right.
I generally don't give money to these causes because I'm incorporating that. Now, I usually try to make it an even number at the end of the day, but I feel like, the money is not always the most important thing. And that's where the awareness comes back to. So hope that makes it clear.
Yeah. And actually that's a great point, because I know a lot of these things that you do, especially the ones where you're raising funds for them, you think when you're doing that, you think, oh, I got to come up with X amount of dollars, but they don't usually put any pressure on you to raise X amount of dollars, right? So you're just going to raise whatever you can raise. And to your point, it's not like you're giving the money. It's others giving the money. You're just doing what you got to do with your time, your efforts, and your network that you have currently, right? To reach out to those folks.
Yeah.
Like me.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you obviously you've been generous and with your time as well. So let's not forget that. Every video that I have, or most videos I have been helped and generated by you as well. No, I think the benefit of what I'm doing is I can't do it wrong.
Right.
I'm contacting a nonprofit. They don't know who I am. They just know that I'm saying, hey, I'm this knucklehead that wants to, jump in the ocean January 1st, and I'll raise you some money. And I want to let them be the beneficiary. And they probably scratch their head like, oh, God, what is this dude doing? And when it turns out, I mean, I've got some really, really generous friends. And again, going back to the Lions Club, they have been remarkably generous. They see my passion, and they've been generous to help me out year in and year out with, sizable donations to whatever the cause is. And they know that I vetted the cause, but I speak to the board of directors, and I alert them in December at the board meeting that what I'm planning on doing January 1st. And I think they've always been very, very generous.
I mean, that's amazing. It's one charitable organization giving to another. Yeah. That's an amazing thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the Lions Club does, because we help out local charities, and they know that I'm putting the efforts in to help out another local charity. So it's kind of neat. I also, when we're done selling the Christmas trees, a lot of the guys, we get together and kind of have our last night of celebration for the trees are gone. And, it's always one of those that, hey, just so you guys know, you're welcome to join me, for the Polar Plunge. And the answer is always like, I'd rather pay. So that's the Polar Plunge is kind of a nice opportunity, because I always say you're totally welcome to join me. The ocean's huge. It's plenty of room. And most people choose to, here's $10, here's $12, $20, $100, and that works for them better.
And that's great. I mean, you scare them away from the temperatures and just the description of actually plunging in, and force them to give instead. That's wonderful. You're diving into the ocean. What kind of temperatures and what kind of situations?
Yeah. So many people are not fond of, Boston winters. Probably 99.9% of the people never think about swimming during Boston winters. So we've had some brutal January 1st. We've also had, a 55-degree day where we're throwing a Frisbee around on the beach. So not too damaging. But I'll tell you, the three worst years I could think of. One year, I think about 9 years ago, when we had major storms, I had pneumonia. So I went January 1st to meet my friends. I did not plunge because I had pneumonia. I had promised all my loved ones that I was not going in. So I wore my suit. I wore my one-piece winter suit to the plunge, watched everybody else plunge, and said, okay, I promise you I'm going February 1st. I'm postponing it a month. Turns out between that January 1st and that February 1st, we had about 30 inches of snow. You might remember, Andy, because you were there.
Yes.
There was a path shoveled from the bathhouse to the ocean with through the 2 feet of snow. Also, it happened to be the New England Patriots were in the Super Bowl that day. So I kicked off my February 1st. It's just a brutal, brutal morning. It wasn't so bad. I mean, the temperature wasn't bad, but there was just a ton of snow. And I remember you and Dana having your down jackets on, yelling at me to hurry up. And I thought, I'm in a swimsuit. So that was challenging. One of the most challenging days was a January 1st that was -1 when I got to Boston. It was brutal. And the L Street Brownies had taken precautions to make sure that we didn't do anything too stupid. We all had to have sneakers. We all had to have hats when we got out. And there were many, many, many fewer people plunging that day. And it was funny because people were walking very slowly into the water, and the first 4 feet of the bottom of the water, so the sand in the ocean, was frozen. So it was ice. So people that walked in slowly could not get back out. And I don't have to describe the scene of a Southie beach on January 1st, but there's a Google search it, I suppose. So not necessarily what you want to see first thing in the morning on January 1st, but it was a fun time. It was cold and went in and out, but the worst day was actually a warm 9 degrees, but it was 25-mile-an-hour winds, and the wind is what was absolutely brutal. And our friend Jim Laughlin has plunged several times with me, and his brother Tom as well. But I remember going back to the Life is Good retail store, and we'd have some hot chocolate and things like that. And my fingers were just cold for hours and hours. And again, it sounds like, as I say it out loud, it sounds ridiculous. But I've been able to raise, Andy, over 20 years, if I'm raising $4,000, it's probably getting close to $100,000 I've raised for doing this. So it's a lot of money. So so I've been, let me be cold, let me be freezing for a day. I'm not dead yet, so I'm going to keep doing it. And it makes me feel great. So Dana has been by my side most years. You've been there helping out with video. And it's great because I think because I have the video evidence, I send that out after the Polar Plunge, and people get to see it and say, God, this guy is nuts. And then I get, more donations afterwards as well. So it's, I think people feel like they're part of the network, even though they didn't plunge. They get to tell the story about this guy that's a knucklehead they know who plunges every year. A little bit of a side note, I've met some really great people there, people that have done it for years as well. And it's neat. Some people just do it because that's their genesis for the new year. This is how I'm going to start. I'm washing away last year. I'm starting off brand new. And, I've met people that are recovering alcoholics that I've just chatted with. They say, oh, I'm going to make it a great year. Okay, great. And Dana and I went there and just kind of plunged in and met a great guy that he had never done it before. He's just going to jump in. And we ended up taking a picture together because he's like, oh my gosh, you've done it that many times. And, I don't know if it's good or bad to say I've done it that many times, but it's a dedication to helping others. And that truly makes me feel good.
So I'm sure, there are lots of ways to find charitable work or charitable opportunities for yourself, or even just not charitable, but even just volunteering. Do you go out of your way to find these, and how do you find these charities? Or is it that they've gotten wind of you and they're starting to search you out at all?
Yeah, that's a funny question. No, nobody's looking for me. I have had some charities that I've worked with in the past that have said, "Oh, are you doing it for us again?" And the answer is no. I generally don't want to repeat because my goal, as mentioned earlier, is to raise awareness. So the funds are great, but raising awareness is very important. I think on that same note, I like around Thanksgiving timeframe finding a charity, or if I hear something in the news during the year, it's not that I'm looking for the charity; it's I'm looking for an audience that needs help.
Right.
So I found out someone's has lost a child, that there's a charity that could help out in that capacity. Great. Or, someone who's lost a sibling as a young child. That's like, there are other charities that can help out in that capacity. So when I hear things like, oh, I didn't know that these tragedies happen to other people, it kind of clicks with me, and I just try to help out where I can. Another charity I've worked with, a good friend of mine is a musician, and his child was challenged with cancer at a very young age. And God, I mean, the challenges this guy had, he's got twin daughters and one had cancer. And they both had, the one who was stricken with cancer was challenged, and the one who wasn't felt guilty. And thank goodness his child with cancer is now cancer-free and, doing great. But he created a charity and he, works with inner city kids that have never heard live music before. So he'll go around to schools. And I was fortunate enough to help out his charity one year. And it just, he'll go to schools where kids, English is perhaps their second language, and live music was not a thing they'd ever seen. And he just plays acoustically and has songs, and it's wonderful to see him do his work. So that's an interesting one that I never thought was, these poor kids have never heard live music. That didn't click until I found out about it.
Right.
And then another one is a camp for, children that have lost parents, and it's devastating. I've gone back to that camp a couple times to be a counselor, and it's the other counselors and the professionals in the counseling and therapy world have said I'm great, but man, is that a tough job to work with kids that have lost someone, and they're little kids. I mean, death is not too particular in how it happens. So some of these kids are really young, or the things that they've seen or witnessed is just really challenging. And I've had a very fortunate life, but I like to be able to help out as I can. And those weekend camps are tough. And I know I've probably talked to you about them as well. And it's emotionally draining, but you just feel so good for helping out and knowing perhaps I've made a difference in these kids' lives. So that's always a goal.
That's great. So how do you physically find these places that, if you know nothing about them, how do you find them?
It's interesting. Some have fallen in my lap because of a news article I've heard. There was a documentary on the Boston Marathon bombing, and I found out about the family of those brothers, and that I just contacted them. So that's how that one worked. That was it just seemed like it was the right one to do for me that year. Then other ones I will just search certain terms, whether it's I'll Google children as a beneficiary of a charity, and just you go down a wormhole sometimes of different things, but you start to narrow them down and identify what exactly it is you're looking for. So I generally don't like to find like the Red Cross or the Jimmy Fund. They're all remarkable charities, but I don't want to make a small splash in a big pond. I want to make a big splash in a small pond, and that's really the way I go. So most of the time when I mention raising awareness, it's because they're not the Red Cross. It's because they're not, the Jimmy Fund. People haven't heard of many of these places. So it is a challenge to get the word out about these charities. So when I find a charity that I can get behind and also really rally my network, I think that's probably the easiest way for me. And that's not the same recipe for everybody else's success. I think, you've got to find something that you're really passionate about. And for me, helping out kids is tremendous. And I do a little bit of that on my side hustle too, working with kids. And it's just great. So being able to work with them at camps and work with these charities, a lot of the nonprofits I've actually worked with, as you mentioned earlier, I've worked with them and spent time at their locations too.
So it's not like, charities can't use your help. Clearly, all charities are looking for help. It's not like you're going to ever be turned away. I imagine that's never happened. So, the message sounds to me like it's just ask. If you're interested in helping, just ask them if they could use your help.
Yeah, often these small charities are overwhelmed because they have just a few volunteers working the desk or the phones. So I would say be persistent, and eventually, a phone call. I generally send an email and then follow up with a phone call because I want them to have all the information of what I'm doing. But yeah, to your point, if you want to help out, it could be any capacity. You can pick up phones. You can, work around the property. You could just, if you have something that you're really passionate about and you want to help out, but you're, a landscaper, maybe go to that facility and see if you could cut the lawn or help them out plant flowers. Just use your brain and be creative, because I think people are genuinely happy to get help, but they're also really, really interested in telling their story too. And if they can tell their story to some additional person and that could help, that's the name of what they're trying to do.
You had mentioned that you had done some skating for charity when you were young. Any other things that you've done to raise money other than that and polar plunging?
Yeah, sure. I've done a bunch. The skate-a-thons were kind of my introduction to fundraising. And that was cool, being a little kid roller skating and having friends show up to raise money for juvenile diabetes was kind of cool. Since then, and I think a lot more popular events are, 5Ks, charity 5Ks. Right out of grad school, a classmate of mine had sadly lost his father, and we didn't really know why. We didn't question it until about the summer later, and he said, yeah, my father had died by suicide. And we said, oh, what? And, we became very, very aware of, whoa, what is this? So, it was just a bunch of classmates that did this 5K. So it was for the Samaritans. And Samaritans is a great organization, and we did it. And the next year, I have a bunch of friends that are like really strong runners and like track stars in college. And I was, hey, you guys want to do it? And we showed up with the top 5 runners. 4 of them were from our team, and it was like these guys are incredible. There were no prizes. It was just fun to do that. So yeah, I've done some charity runs. My friend Becca Peasy's got a charity run she does in Belmont, and she's a world-renowned distance runner, marathoner and ultra marathoner. So I've worked with her, helping her race. In fact, we did a relay race from Cape Cod to Boston Common for Memorial Day, and I was actually the driver in the car. So it's about 100 miles, which is not a long car ride, but if you're going at the pace of a runner, it's a long car ride. So we started at 6 p.m. down in Chatham, and we got up to the Boston Common around 11 in the morning. It was an incredible race, and it was neat to be part of this group of ultra marathoners. And these guys would get out and do 6 to 8 mile legs and just run and run and run. And so that again, that's kind of volunteering, but it's my network, and it was fun. I've also had the pleasure of being in the Harpoon 5 miler. I've been involved all 20 years that they've been doing this, and the first year I did it, I know it's called the 5 miler, but I showed up and I was like, oh. I thought when I got by mile 3, I was like, where are we doing? Oh, it's 5 miles. So I thought it was a 5K. So that's on me, I suppose. But yeah, I'm not a good runner. I just do it because it's a great group of people, and again, it's the camaraderie. I would never run 5 miles on my own. That seems ridiculous. But when there's people in front of you, it's just always like, hey, I want to just get past this guy. And the charity that Harpoon has been raising funds for is ALS research, and the funds are just unbelievable what they've done, and the research. It's a good group of people. As I said, being in it for 20 years kind of makes me one of the OGs, and it's nice to just kind of continue helping others in this capacity for sure.
Ken, do you have any advice for folks that want to really get involved, but really don't know where to start? I know you've mentioned how you started, but any advice for folks that want to do this?
Yeah, I don't think there's a perfect way to do it. I think one is having the interest. And if you're interested, it's easy. You find something you're passionate about, whether it's helping kids, whether it's helping at an animal shelter, whether it's helping at a senior center, and then make a call. Ask them. If you don't know who you want to help, if you don't have a specific entity, you can, look at your community, whether it's churches or synagogues or, service organizations. Ask what they're doing. There's always volunteer opportunities. And it doesn't have to be working Thanksgiving morning at a soup kitchen. They certainly need help, but every day they need help at a soup kitchen. So you could do something that's a smaller take, but also you don't have to make it a major change in your life. It could be something small. Starting off small is great. You might find out this is not your jam and you really prefer fundraising or giving, donations. But you might find out this is something that's really special to you. A lot of companies will now offer days off if you want to volunteer, or your donations can be doubled by your company. So there's a lot of ways to be involved that you might not have to get your hands dirty or be intimately involved with the charity. So there's a lot of different ways to get involved, I guess, is really the point. And if you want to put the effort in, it's easy enough.
Ken, it's been a pleasure. Ken Krilla, professional volunteer. I'm putting professional in quotes because you generally don't get paid for most of this stuff, but professional all the way as far as how you handle these things. Volunteering, charity work, just helping buddies out. I know you do a lot of that stuff. I've called you many times. Thank you so much for being on Occupations.
It was a pleasure.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Please tune in for another episode.
Occupations has been brought to you by lotsofmaps.com. Please follow Occupations the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to find information about our next episode or to see what past episodes are available.